Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR Official 24 channel. Mariah was caught on the security footage. That is when Sharon called out Phyllis saying she is a psycho. Sharon thinks Phyllis is really crazy. Mariah being caught on the security footage is a deal, because now everyone knows what Mariah did. Sharon is not afraid to say that Phyllis is a psycho. Mariah Copeland is going to get caught on the security footage. This is when Sharon Newman calls out Phyllis Summers saying she is a psycho. At the motel, Mariah Copeland talks to Dominic Winters about their hiding place. Dominic Winters gets up to go to the bathroom before they start their car ride. After that, Dominic Winters puts on his hat and coat. Mariah Copeland tells Dominic Winters to keep his head down and run to the car with Mariah Copeland. As they are running, Dominic Winters accidentally leaves one of his mittens on the floor. Mariah Copeland and Dominic Winters are in a hurry to get to the car. Mariah is in the car with Dominic. They are going to play a game called I Spy. Mariah will get a little scared when she sees a police car.
It will just keep driving.
Mariah will start crying at one point. She will tell Dominic that she is just really happy to be spending time with him. At home, Mariah will watch the Friday episode of YNR. On this episode, Abby Winters and Devin Winters will talk about the kidnapper. They will say that the kidnapper was in a spot where the security camera could not see them when they took Dominic. The kidnapper was seen taking Dom from the property. It was really hard to say if the kidnapper was a man or a woman because they had so many clothes on. Dom did not seem scared all when he took the kidnapper's hand. This makes Devin and Abby think that the kidnapper might be someone they know. Devin and Abby will go to Crimson Lights later. That is where they will see Tessa Porter and Daniel Romalotti Jr. Daniel and Tessa find out that Dominic has been taken. Then Devin shows them a picture of a scarf that was found. The scarf is very special. Tessa gave the scarf to Mariah for Christmas years ago. When Tessa sees the picture, she will be very upset. She will realize that something is wrong with Mariah. Tessa has to admit that Mariah has not been okay for a time. Mariah even left the facility in Boston where she was getting help. Tessa knows this because Mariah checked herself out of the facility recently. Tessa will not want to believe that Mariah has gone this far. Devin and Abby are going to find out the truth soon. The police are going to have a clue because someone saw a kid who looks like Dom at a motel. Abby and Devin will go to the room where Mariah and Dominic were last seen. All they will find is Dominic's mitten. After Abby sees the mitten and starts crying, Devin will look at a picture from the motel's security camera. Devin is going to tell everyone that Mariah is the one who took Dominic. Then Devin will go home with Abby. They will try to figure out why Mariah did this. Tessa is still really worried.
She is talking to Daniel about it.
She does not understand why Mariah would take Dominic. Kane Ashby is on his train. He tells Billy Abbott that he now owns the company and they are making the papers to prove it. Billy Abbott seems sad about this. Kane Ashby does not get why Billy is so sad. He thinks Billy should be really happy. That will lead to Billy offering updates on Jill Abbott's weakening heart and how it's best if they do not go public with their big news yet. At the GCAC, Phyllis will argue with Nick Newman before Sharon joins him in telling Phyllis what he thinks of her. Sharon will say that Phyllis is just as bad as Martin Laurent, who's a very bad person, so Phyllis will be offended by what Sharon says. Phyllis will not care if her friendship with Sharon ends because she will think that Sharon and Nick never really cared about Jill Abbott's friend Phyllis to begin with. Nick will warn Phyllis that she's gone too far, so Summer Newman won't forgive her for this. After Nick warns Phyllis about achieving her dreams only to end up alone, Phyllis will privately try to call Summer and get no answer. Summer will text Phyllis not to call her again, so Phyllis will seem uneasy. Mariah reached her breaking point. She surrendered to the police. This is when Dom got to reunite with his parents. Mariah and her situation with Dom and his parents has been a deal. Mariah is finally going to face the police and Dom is going back to his parents. Mariah Copeland is going to have to give herself up to the police at some point. She is really going to get to a point where she cannot take it anymore, so this means that Dominic Winters will get to go to his real mom and dad. Mariah Copeland recently took Dominic Winters. This has been a complete disaster for Abby Winters and Devin Winters. Abby Winters and Devin Winters really want their son back. Mariah Copeland is holding on to Dominic Winters because she thinks he is her only hope. Mariah has been feeling really lost for a long time. Then she started having these visions of Ian Ward. These visions make her think that she can start over again with Dom. Ian Ward is like a sign that Mariah and Dominic are meant to be. At least that is what Mariah thinks Ian Ward is trying to tell her. Deep down, Mariah knows that is not true. Dominic has a mom, and her name is Abby. Abby is Dominic's mom. Dominic also knows Devin. Dominic belongs with Abby and Devin. Before that happens, Dominic will have to go through a lot of tough things first. Mariah knows that Ian Ward is trying to tell her something about Dom. Mariah is not sure what Ian Ward wants her to do with Dom. Ian is pushing Mariah to talk to Dominic about something that's really tough. He wants her to tell Dominic that Abby and Devin do not want him around anymore. Ian thinks that when the time is right, Mariah can help Dominic feel a little better about being left. People who watch The Young and the Restless are going to be very curious to see what Mariah does. Will she really tell Dominic that Abby and Devin are done with him? That is a hurtful thing to say. Can Mariah really look at Dominic? Tell him that his parents do not care about him anymore? Ian wants Mariah to do this. It is a very hard thing to do. Dominic could get really upset. Start crying for his mom and dad. He might get as desperate as Abby and Devin are. This is because Dominic wants to prove that Mariah is wrong. The thing is, Dominic is not alone all. His parents Devin and Abby love him much, and they want him back. Mariah knows how much they care about Dominic. She will probably feel bad if she says something that hurts Dominic. Dominic is very important to Mariah. She does not want to hurt his feelings. Once Dominic realizes the game's over and worries he'll never see his parents again, that could push Mariah to her breaking point. If Dominic doesn't tug at Mariah's heartstrings enough, maybe Tessa Porter could become part of Dom's rescue and get through to her. Regardless, Mariah should see the error of her ways sooner or later, so Abby and Devin will get the Dominic reunion they've been waiting for. Mariah Copeland, frozen on-screen in a moment that no one was ever supposed to see, a moment that sends Sharon Newman into full mama bear mode and finally pushes her to call Phyllis Summers out for what she truly is, a ticking psychological time bomb who has been manipulating, provoking, and destabilizing everyone around her for months, maybe longer. Because it all starts innocently enough when a routine systems check at society reveals corrupted files on the security server, and while most people would shrug it off as another Genoa City tech glitch, this time the footage recovered is crystal clear and devastating, showing Mariah sneaking into a restricted area late at night, her face tense, her movements careful, clearly hiding something, and when the clip is accidentally played during a staff meeting, the room goes dead silent as Sharon recognizes her daughter instantly, her heart dropping into her stomach as she watches Mariah pause, look directly into the camera with haunted eyes, and then disable it before disappearing into the shadows, and the shockwaves ripple instantly. Because this isn't just about Mariah breaking rules, it's about timing, about motive, about everything that's gone wrong lately, from Lucy's emotional spiral to Faith's lingering trauma to the constant chaos orbiting Phyllis, and Sharon's mind races as puzzle pieces start snapping together in the most horrifying way. Because she remembers Phyllis pushing Mariah, needling her, gaslighting her, planting doubts, whispering half-truths and outright lies under the guise of concern, always smiling that smug smile while pretending to be the victim, and suddenly Sharon sees it clearly. Phyllis didn't just stir the pot, she poisoned it, because as Sharon confronts Mariah privately, her voice gentle but shaking, Mariah completely breaks down, confessing that she felt trapped, manipulated, convinced that if she didn't take matters into her own hands, everything she loved would be destroyed. And while Mariah won't name names at first, she doesn't have to, because every sentence screams Phyllis, every tear confirms it, and Sharon's grief turns to rage as she realizes her daughter was emotionally cornered by someone who thrives on chaos, someone who feeds off other people's pain, and that's when Sharon decides she's done playing nice, done pretending Phyllis is just difficult or misunderstood. Because the truth is darker, and she's not going to let Mariah take the fall for a mess Phyllis engineered. So Sharon storms into Crimson Lights where Phyllis is loudly holding court, already spinning some new version of reality where she's the wronged party yet again, and Sharon doesn't hesitate. She calls her out in front of everyone, her voice calm but lethal, accusing Phyllis of psychological manipulation, of targeting Mariah when she was vulnerable, of pushing her until she snapped. And the room freezes as Phyllis laughs it off at first, mocking Sharon, calling her dramatic, unstable, off her meds, because that's always been Phyllis's favorite weapon. But this time it doesn't work, because Sharon has receipts, timelines, text messages, witnesses, and most importantly, the security footage. And when Sharon reveals that Mariah was caught on camera doing something she clearly didn't want to do, something she was emotionally coerced into, Phyllis's mask slips just for a second, long enough for everyone to see the panic flash in her eyes. And that's when things get truly explosive, because Phyllis snaps back, blaming Mariah, blaming Sharon, blaming anyone but herself, ranting about how she's always the scapegoat, how everyone uses her, how she's the real victim. And the more she talks, the more unhinged she sounds, pacing, raising her voice, contradicting herself, until even her so-called allies start exchanging uneasy glances, because this isn't passionate Phyllis. This is paranoid Phyllis, and Sharon finally says what everyone has been thinking but no one has dared to say out loud. She calls Phyllis a psycho, not as an insult, but as a diagnosis, saying Phyllis doesn't just cause chaos, she needs it. She creates crises so she can feel powerful, relevant, alive, and the words hit like a slap, because they're true, and deep down Phyllis knows it, which is why she loses it completely, screaming that Sharon is projecting, that she's the crazy one, that she's always been jealous. But her meltdown only confirms Sharon's point, because while Sharon stands firm, grounded, protective, Phyllis spirals, unraveling in front of an audience that is no longer buying her act, and the fallout is immediate and brutal, because once the footage becomes public knowledge, questions start flying, investigations open, and Mariah becomes the center of a scandal she never wanted, while Sharon refuses to let her face it alone, vowing to protect her daughter at all costs, even if it means exposing every ugly truth Phyllis has buried. And as for Phyllis, the walls start closing in fast, because people begin replaying old situations in their minds, realizing how often Phyllis was the common denominator, the instigator lurking in the background, pulling strings, nudging people toward disaster. And suddenly her alliances crumble, her support evaporates, and she finds herself isolated, furious, and more dangerous than ever. Because if there's one thing Phyllis can't stand, it's losing control of the narrative, and with Sharon stepping into the role of truth-teller and protector, and Mariah's footage serving as undeniable proof that something sinister has been at play, Genoa City is bracing for a full-scale implosion, because this isn't just about one video or one confrontation. This is about years of manipulation coming to light, about a mother finally standing up for her child, about a woman being exposed for the psychological havoc she's wreaked. And as tensions rise and loyalties are tested, one thing becomes chillingly clear. This story is far from over, because Phyllis may be cornered, but she's not done fighting, and if history has taught Genoa City anything, it's that a desperate Phyllis is the most dangerous Phyllis of all. And just when everyone in Genoa City thinks the worst of it has already happened, the aftermath of that security footage revelation only grows darker and more twisted, because the truth doesn't just settle once it's exposed. It metastasizes, spreading into every corner of Mariah's life and dragging Sharon and Phyllis into an emotional war that feels less like a feud and more like a psychological reckoning. As whispers ripple through the city about what Mariah was really doing that night, why she looked so terrified, and who truly put her up to it. And while Sharon keeps her focus laser-locked on protecting her daughter, Phyllis goes into full survival mode, scrambling to rewrite history before it completely buries her. But the problem this time is that too many people saw her crack, too many people heard Sharon's words, and once that label is spoken out loud, once someone dares to say psycho in reference to Phyllis Summers, it sticks in a way no insult ever has before, because it finally explains everything, and Mariah feels the weight of it immediately. As reporters sniff around, social media explodes, and old wounds she thought had healed are ripped wide open, forcing her to relive every moment Phyllis cornered her emotionally, every time she was told she was strong enough to handle it, while being quietly pushed toward the edge, and Sharon watches her daughter struggle with guilt and shame, blaming herself for being caught, blaming herself for not speaking up sooner. And it nearly destroys Sharon to see that familiar self-loathing creep back in, because she knows exactly who planted those seeds. So when Phyllis shows up unannounced at the cottage, demanding to clear the air, Sharon doesn't hesitate. She shuts the door in her face, literally and emotionally, drawing a line in the sand that Phyllis has never been forced to respect before, and that rejection sends Phyllis spiraling even further. Because for the first time, Sharon isn't engaging, isn't defending, isn't reacting emotionally. She's simply refusing, and that terrifies Phyllis more than any confrontation ever could, since control has always been her currency, and she's losing it fast, which becomes painfully obvious when she starts showing up everywhere Sharon and Mariah are, insisting she's being misunderstood, that she was only trying to help, that Mariah asked for her advice, and the more she talks, the more unhinged her version of events becomes, because she can't keep her story straight, contradicting herself from one conversation to the next, and people notice, including Nick, who starts replaying past interactions with Phyllis in his mind, recognizing patterns he ignored for years, realizing how often she escalated situations under the guise of protection, how often chaos followed wherever she went, and when even Nick starts pulling away, Phyllis's paranoia explodes. Convinced Sharon has turned everyone against her, convinced she's the victim of some grand conspiracy, and that's when things take a truly frightening turn, because Phyllis begins fixating on the idea that Mariah is lying, that Sharon coached her, that the footage was edited, and her obsession with proving the truth becomes so intense that it borders on delusion, prompting Sharon to quietly consult with professionals, terrified that Phyllis's behavior is escalating into something genuinely dangerous. Especially when Mariah starts receiving anonymous messages, vague but threatening, warning her to remember who really helped you, messages Sharon instantly recognizes as classic Phyllis manipulation, designed to intimidate without leaving fingerprints. And while Phyllis denies everything, her denial rings hollow, especially when her emotional volatility increases, snapping at allies, lashing out at perceived enemies, burning bridges she once relied on, until she's standing alone, isolated by her own behavior, while Sharon, ironically, grows stronger, more grounded, more certain than she's ever been, because protecting Mariah has clarified everything for her, stripped away years of second-guessing and guilt, reminding her that growth isn't about being liked, it's about doing what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. And as Mariah slowly begins to reclaim her voice, opening up publicly about emotional manipulation and psychological coercion, her honesty strikes a nerve across Genoa City, inspiring others to quietly come forward with their own stories about Phyllis's influence, moments they brushed off at the time but now recognize as toxic, and the collective realization hits like a tidal wave, because this wasn't an isolated incident, this was a pattern, and the more that pattern is exposed, the more Phyllis feels hunted, misunderstood, betrayed, fueling a dangerous victim mentality that pushes her further from reality, culminating in a volatile confrontation when she corners Sharon once more, accusing her of destroying her life, screaming that Mariah owes her, that none of this would have happened without her guidance, and Sharon, calm but resolute, finally tells Phyllis the one thing she's never heard before, that she doesn't get credit for someone else's survival, that helping doesn't mean controlling, and that love doesn't leave scars. And those words land harder than any slap, because they expose the truth Phyllis has spent her entire life avoiding, that she confuses intensity with intimacy, chaos with connection, and power with love. And as security intervenes, escorting a screaming, sobbing Phyllis away, the silence that follows is heavy but necessary, because for the first time in a long time, Genoa City isn't enabling her behavior, it's confronting it, and while no one knows exactly what will happen next, whether Phyllis will seek help, double down, or lash out in one final, catastrophic move, one thing is certain. The era of people making excuses for her is over, and as Sharon wraps her arms around Mariah, holding her through tears of relief and exhaustion, the message is clear. This isn't just about exposure. It's about accountability, about breaking cycles, about choosing truth over comfort. And while the scars left behind won't heal overnight, a new chapter has begun. One where manipulation is no longer mistaken for passion, where silence is no longer confused with strength, and where a mother's unwavering love proves powerful enough to stand up to even the most destructive forces Genoa City has ever seen.